Yo, how we doing, people? I don't know why I have a southern accent all of a sudden. Happy live podcasting, my friends. I just want to fire out a little promotional tweet here. Gotta let the people know we're live. All right. We got LaDuca in the house. How's it going, John? We got Bo, Patrick, Drop Top, my dude. How's it going? Was the first comment, so shout out to Drop Top Submarine commenting in on the announcement of this stream at like noon today. We got, apologies if I butcher this, but Murillo? Is the L silent maybe? Murillo? Probably Murillo. DS Guimarães? I took Italian, so that's about my extent of any sort of Latin-based wording. Dean in the house, Shane, Drip, M, and many, many more. Welcome in, everybody. So I'm going to be kind of rattling off like typical podcast stuff, and then hold your super chats until we get to the mailbag portion. I should be able to see them still when we get to the mailbag part, but I don't want to miss anybody's super chat questions because we're going to be doing mailbag towards the back end of the show. But we don't have too long of we don't have too much content before we get to that point. But just a heads up, there's a chance I miss any super chat questions because I'm going to do that at the back end. I also will not be interacting with the chat while I go until maybe a little more in the end. But here we go. Welcome in, everybody, to a special live edition of the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a hybrid show. We're going to be reflecting on a couple of my main takeaways, a couple of topical points I want to hit on from last week as we look forward, and then I want to talk about the 3 Thursday Thanksgiving games. I want to do my previews and my picks for those games. And then we're going to get into a big bag of mail. Before we get started, I want to let you guys know that this show is brought to you by SeatGeek. On Sunday, me and my fiance, Anna, we woke up and said, hey, the Packers are in town playing the Vikings down the street. We should check out some tickets. Pulled up SeatGeek, found great seats, like 40-yard line, lower bowl, really well-priced. Like just as cheap as any of the nosebleeds. So we grabbed those. We walked out, had a great time. I've been using SeatGeek for years, happy enough to be partnered with them. So we got football games going on, basketball, I think soccer maybe, football for the the European crowd, the 6 or 7% of you out there. But anyway, lots of sports going on. We were able to go to games again, and SeatGeek is the place to buy tickets, man. That's where I buy all of my tickets. You get the best prices, the best user interface, good customer support. They get you your tickets like right away. So now, using promo code ThatFranchiseGuy, you can save $20 on your first purchase there. So go check it out. If you're going to any games, you'll support my channel in the process. This show is also brought to you by my amazing supporters on Patreon, where you can support this show, but you will also get exclusive content. You'll get the ability to submit questions to the show. We're going to be open up the mailbag at the end of this podcast. We got like 35 questions from you guys, so amazing. But yeah, you'll get exclusive content. You'll also get access to film breakdowns. We just did Dak Prescott's game against the Patriots last week. Was really revealing to see some of the stuff that Dak is doing to improve his game. So that was fun. We got draft season around the corner, lots of exclusive draft content, and you'll also get access to my exclusive picks, weekly picks over there on Patreon. So if you want to support the channel, get exclusive content. In the meantime, head over to patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. And let's get into the football. So my first big topic that I want to hit on here today is all about the Seattle Seahawks, who have become a very interesting narrative over the last, I really think this started about last week after the big Packers loss. With Russ coming back, the team fell to 3-6 last week. They fall to 3-7 this week, losing a game at home against Colt McCoy. And the big question is, should the Seahawks rebuild? And what does that mean? Is this a total tear it down? Let's talk about my stance on the Seattle Seahawks right now. And this totally starts with Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll's had a ton of success in Seattle, obviously. But I do think it is officially time, and it's probably been time for this for a good while now, but I think this is officially kind of the over the hump moment where it's just time, man. It's time for Pete Carroll officially to resign or to be fired if he refuses to resign. He does some good things. But I think over the last 3 or 4 seasons, he has certainly not been a top 10 head coach. He's been kind of an average coach to the point where now I would say he's probably closer to the bottom half than the top half. He does some nice stuff. He's a good culture guy. A lot of Seahawks are kind of overperformers. He gets these guys that don't necessarily have the pedigree or the investment to step up. You do see that throughout the team. The team plays hard. They're scrappy. There's good redeeming qualities about Pete Carroll. But at this point, the game has just passed him by. And I think you're seeing it show up on and off the field because he has this run the ball, play defense mentality that just doesn't work. Sorry, got to fix my screen real quick. But it just doesn't work in 2021. And you have to think more modern. You have to probably open up the passing game, accept that you're just not going to have great defense week after week after week. And he is so stubbornly focused on we're going to run the ball, we're going to play defense, and frankly, we're going to punt a lot. We saw it last week against the Packers. There was multiple fourth and 1, 4th and 2, where you have Russell Wilson, man. Like, I get that he's injured, but you go for it. Even the most, there's so many modern teams in the league right now that are going for it and accepting it's an offensive league, man. You got to open up the playbook a little bit. You got to get a little more aggressive and accept that a 30-yard punt just doesn't do that much for you. And, even some more run, there's teams around the league that are very run-oriented, teams that are like, we're going to play defense, run the ball, teams like the Colts, the Ravens, but they still are going for it, right? If anything, if you have a great run game, it helps you on 4th and 1 and 4th and 2. But not Pete. Pete is stuck in late 90s, early 2000s football, and it translates, and it was again this week, by the way. Some of you guys in the chat are saying the video is broken here. Looks good on my end, so just let me know. I want to make sure we're still going. So hold on. I think we're good. This is the thing about doing a live feed is I never know if it's my end or the chat's end. So we're going to edit this out, but I just want to make sure we're still live. Let me just check here. Going. Yeah, we're good. All right. People in the chat delaying the podcast. All right, we'll edit that out. Clap, clap. Hopefully we remember to edit that out. Anyway, there was a moment in the Seahawks-Cardinals game where the tide was turning a little bit. The Seahawks had a really bad first half. They were maybe getting a little bit of momentum in the second half of that game. They get the ball back, midfield, down by 10 points, again, third quarter, and they go run, screen, punt. Great. Like, open this thing up. You got DK Metcalf, you got Tyler Lockett, you got a coordinator that's ready to throw the ball, and Russell Wilson. So on the field, it's clearly showing that Pete's mentality just is hurting this team. But it's translating now to like hurting the roster building aspect of the team as well. And it gets a little complicated because no, he's not the GM, but I think very clearly Pete Carroll has his hands on the direction of the team. And now for about 3 or 4 years, I think Pete's mentality is hurting this team in the front office department. It started with, the LJ Collier pick. Like, we need our Michael Bennett, right? Trading for Jamal Adams, multiple first-round picks, whereas he hasn't worked out. He hasn't been the next Cam Chancellor because his scheme has had to change. The league has learned how to beat cover 3. That's why we're seeing quarters coverage all over the place. The Shanahan offense with these play-action, deep crossers, that is specifically a cover 3 beater and a reaction to the Seattle cover 3 defense that took the league by storm. So he's building, for this 4-3, Seattle 3 defense, but the league has passed it up, right? Specifically with those pieces. LJ Collier, Jamal Adams, they don't have the same impact as they used to have. He drafts Jordan Brooks in the first round to be his KJ Wright replacement. He's not a cover linebacker. He's a downhill run defending type. They draft Rashad Penny, right? We got to run the ball. We need Rashad Penny. We need elite running back in the first round. It's just all of this points towards that is Pete Carroll's mentality, and it's hurting. It is, I think, a significant reason for the talent gap on this roster. So, long story short, yes, I think it is officially time for Pete Carroll to go, which in part is signaling, yes, the Seahawks have to do some bit of a rebuild here. Now, what does that mean for Russell Wilson? Because that's a little bit more complicated in my opinion. I think there's obvious reasons that would say keep Russell Wilson, let him work with a new coach, let Russ cook with a Brian Dable or a something like that, something exciting. And that those reasons speak for themselves. He's in this weird state, however, where he's 32 years old. The last 2 seasons, he's been, I would just say, highly inconsistent. I think he's learning that he can't get away with quite as much as far as the play extension stuff. His magical ability to elude sacks, he just is not doing that at the same clip at his age. So you're in this weird transition area of, do we go forward with Russ at 33 years old, or do we trade him, get probably 2 first-round picks and other resources? They don't have their first-round pick this year, and say, you know what, this division is absolutely stacked right now. We've got Trey Lance entering the picture with Kyle Shanahan. We have the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, who don't seem to be going anywhere. And, of course, the Rams with Matthew Stafford over the next 3 years. They're going to be poised for Super Bowl teams. I think it's very realistic to look at this and say, yes, we'd be able to rebuild faster with Russ, but by the time he's ready to go with this new team, he's going to be 36 by the time we have a real chance at winning this division. So I think that complicates some things. Honestly, if they were in the AFC South or a different division that wasn't as good, I think it would be a little bit more clear to say keep Russ. And if they had their first round pick, I think it'd be more clear to say keep Russ. But I really don't think it's that easy. It's very, very easy to say, no, he's only 32. He should get back to being an elite quarterback. And you don't trade that player. You rebuild the other pieces around that guy, because we all know how difficult it is to find a quarterback as good as Russ. But I do think when you also throw in the fact that Russ has voiced some displeasure with the team, it is a very realistic situation that this team just says, you know what? Let's just hit the restart button and trade Russ. Ultimately, what I would do is ask him, do you want us to trade you, or do you want to stay here for a total rebuild? And kind of give him that option. So that's kind of my answer. Maybe that's a cop-out answer, but that's the next picture here. And I'm very 50-50 on if that is going to happen and if I would do it. I would ask Russ, and I think it's actually at this point 50-50. I think there's a very real chance that they trade Russell Wilson and hit the reset button. Because the rest of this roster very clearly needs a rebuilding. The offensive line's a disaster. Their only good pass protector isn't even good anymore. He's 36 years old. Dwayne Brown, their left tackle, he's clearly probably needs to retire this offseason. So the offensive line's a mess. As weird as it is to say, they do need a running back because Chris Carson seems like his deal with his neck is very – it's a big deal. And you don't want to lean on him anyway because he's had a hard time staying healthy. And then on the defense, their pass rush is virtually non-existent. Their secondary is in disarray. They have some pieces, but no one you're looking ahead like, oh, we've got him, we can build around him. No. So I guess the last question is John Schneider the general manager moving forward? I do think that Pete Carroll kind of has his hands around John Schneider and makes the final call there. I think John Schneider's a great scout. I think he's forward-thinking. I think I would be comfortable giving him an opportunity, maybe a 2-year window, to rebuild this team without Pete Carroll there. That's another interesting scenario. But there is a world where the Seattle Seahawks are looking at a new coach, a new GM, and a new quarterback next year, which is just crazy. I mean, this thing fell apart seemingly so quick, considering they had or have that young, elite franchise quarterback. You just don't see that. Okay, so that's the Seattle Seahawks. And then the other kind of talking point here that I have before we get into the Thanksgiving preview and the mailbag is the Tennessee Titans, who I ranked 13th in my power rankings this week, which is obviously lower than a lot of sources out there are going to have the Titans. It's lower than Titans fans are going to want them to be ranked. And I just felt like I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss why I'm lower on the Titans here. And, you know, the overarching reason for that, of course, is injuries, man. Like, they are getting derailed by injuries. And there's just a hard truth that certain teams deal with more injuries, more impactful injuries than other teams. A lot of people don't like to accept injuries as an excuse, but it is the number one reason for the Titans losing to the Texans and for me dropping them 6 spots in the power rankings and not taking them all that seriously moving forward. This team is not the team they wanted to be at this point in the season heading into the year. So that's obviously very real. But, you know, there's other teams that have been injured. Teams like the Saints, the Niners earlier on in the year, the Seahawks when Russell Wilson went out. There's other teams that I have kicked out of the picture with injuries, kind of a little bit to the degree of what I'm doing with the Titans right now. But there's also teams that are dealing with as many, if not more, injuries than the Titans, like the Packers and the Ravens, who I still have ranked above the Titans and much more in that Super Bowl picture. So what's the difference? And the difference is Ryan Tannehill and the quarterback. And coming into the year, I said Ryan Tannehill is the most overrated player in the NFL. And it's not a personal attack on Ryan Tannehill. I think my record shows that I root for everybody to succeed. As long as you're a good person and you're a hard worker, I want to see you succeed in the NFL. I have nothing against Ryan Tannehill. I love his underdog story, his comeback with the Titans. I've got him in multiple fantasy teams. Like, I enjoy Ryan Tannehill. However, it is literally my job to look at what other people say about players and to voice when I have a disagreement with the way consensus talks about a guy. And with Ryan Tannehill, he was by far the guy heading into the year where I see people ranking him top 10, MVP candidate, saying Titans are Super Bowl pick and all this stuff. And I'm like, hold on. Ryan Tannehill is not a top 10 quarterback. That's not how I feel about Ryan Tannehill when I watch him play. And that is what we're seeing with the Titans right now, is he is a limited passer. He, to me, is in the Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr breadth of players where if you give them great talent around them and a system that really focuses and attacks what those quarterbacks are very good at, he can play and produce like a top 10 player. But the thing is with Ryan Tannehill is he is almost entirely dependent on that play action, intermediate part of the passing game. And that is very dependent on Derrick Henry's existence. Where with Ryan Tannehill, like I said, he's got some very glaring limitations. Traditional dropbacks, he doesn't have the best ability to sense pressure and extend plays. He is what I call a drop and shoot quarterback, where he is going to have that post-snap read, drop into his 7-step drop, make a confident decision, and fire the ball in there. And a lot of times it's going to look good. He's going to make decisions. But the margin for error on those types of plays is much thinner, and you're very much leaning more on your receivers in those situations. I prefer a quarterback that on 3rd and 8, yes, will do that, drop in, make a good read, but if it's not there, instead of forcing it so much like Ryan Tannehill does into tight windows and really leaning on his receiver, I want him to feel the pocket, manipulate the play, find other options, extend the play, all that stuff. And with Ryan Tannehill, you just don't get that. And now that he's in more 3rd and long situations because Derrick Henry's gone and they don't have a run game, and, of course, with receivers out now, with A.J. Brown dealing with a rib injury, Julio Jones, we're seeing a lot of mistakes from Ryan Tannehill. And ever since Derrick Henry went out, the Titans' offense has not been good. They've, at best, been a bottom half offense. And he single-handedly cost them that game against the Houston Texans. I'm sorry. 7 turnover-worthy plays. The defense played great. They were moving the ball. And he kept coughing the ball up. Turnovers, fumbles, you name it. 7 turnover-worthy plays in that game against the Texans. So that, to me, is why I'm lower on the Texans. I think if you give Ryan Tannehill the right stuff, he can execute. He can play like a top 10 quarterback. But the problem is that is so much more dependent on the surroundings than it is with, say, a Lamar Jackson or an Aaron Rodgers. And I bring those two guys up because those are the quarterbacks of the 2 other teams really dealing with injuries right now that I just take much more seriously. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. I felt like I needed to explain a little bit more of why I'm lower on the Tennessee Titans. And let's move on to the Thanksgiving preview here. So let's just go in order with the Bears-Lions game. And I want to take a moment to remind you guys that you can get access to my weekly picks on patreon.com. And those are available every week at the star level Patreon on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. So if you do want my full picks for this week and every week, and you want to support the channel, you can head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy and check it out. But let's hop in to Bears at Lions. The Bears are 3-point underdogs. This is Ryan Tannehill, Andy Dalton making the start in this game. And believe it or not, the Bears offense has actually been a little bit better with Dalton in there. I would say it moves a little more consistently, but you don't get as many big plays with Dalton in there. So it's close to a push, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things that changes too much for the Bears offense. And defensively, they've still been pretty solid without Khalil Mack. So I think the Bears are looking okay heading into this game against a really beat up, not even beat up, just bad Lions team. Jared Goff may or may not play in this game. That might be the difference here. But barring really a, massive lack of effort in this game from the Bears and the Lions coming out like, this is our chance to get a win against Andy Dalton on our home field, Thanksgiving football. This is what Lions football is all about. Barring them coming out and just having this complete physical mismatch where they dominate the line of scrimmage, I do think the Bears should win this game pretty handily. I'm going to pick the Bears 24-17. But I'm a little bit afraid of what I just said happening. And the Lions do come out with much more intensity. So I would just say watch the line of scrimmage in this game. The run games are going to be really important. David Montgomery looked really good last week against the Ravens for what that's worth. And the Lions do play very physical up front. So that's really where I think this game will be won and lost is in the trenches. And in the physicality with the defense and tackling, not missing tackles and stuff. So there's Bears-Lions, not so much an interesting game. Then we have Raiders at Dallas, and Dallas is a 7-point underdog. It seems that Amari Cooper's out. I saw CeeDee Lamb practice today, so he seems to be in. That's a big deal, having CeeDee Lamb out there for this game because without getting I don't want to get into Dak slander or anything, but if you think back to what I said about Ryan Tannehill being a little bit drop and shoot, I think Dak has evolved a little bit in that area this year, but I still think Dak is very much that drop and shoot quarterback like I described, where he is very confident in what he sees post-snap, and he's going to trust his receivers is really what I'm getting at there. And I think having CeeDee Lamb out, having Amari Cooper out, the offense I don't think is nearly as good without either of those guys out there. So CeeDee Lamb's presence in this game is a huge swinging point because the Raiders' defense has not been all that bad. I think without CeeDee Lamb, they could actually do a decent job in this game, and Derek Carr and this offense can be steady enough to maybe pull off the upset here. But if CeeDee Lamb plays, with Dallas coming off a loss, and with how Las Vegas is totally reeling right now, I feel very good about Dallas winning this game. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys 33-20. I think from the Raiders' perspective as well, they really are reeling. Derek Carr is not playing good football right now. They don't have that much of a run game. Their receiving situation, Darren Waller has been very quiet. They don't have that verticality that they had with Henry Ruggs. So all signs should be pointing to Dallas here. I think they'll play pretty fired up on a short week and take care of business. I've got Cowboys 33-20. That's with CeeDee Lamb. Without CeeDee Lamb, I do still think they win, but I think that 7-point spread is a little bit too much, and I would go probably 21-20 Dallas without CeeDee Lamb. And then we've got Buffalo at New Orleans, and I think Alvin Kamara is a big swing in this game. I don't think he's playing at this point. He did not practice Tuesday. That could change a little bit here. But without Alvin Kamara and the Saints being able to run the ball, basically, against the Bills, this shouldn't be all that close of a game. Again, I do like to take teams coming off of bad losses, which I think the Bills were suffering from. The Saints also play a much more aggressive style of defense, which I think is actually not the way to beat the Bills. I think the best way to beat the Bills is do what the Colts do and just, back off, play quarters, play cover two, and force Josh Allen to not make mistakes underneath. The Saints run a lot of blitzes, a lot of man-match stuff, and I think the Bills have the horses to beat that and have a great day offensively. So for the gambling folk out there, I do like the Bills minus 6.5 right now quite a bit. And I also made a little bit of a 7-point teaser on the Cowboys minus 7 and the Bills minus 6.5. So the Cowboys and Bills just have to win the game. And it pays about even. That's pretty hardcore for the gambling folk, but that's what you get over on Patreon. So I wanted to sprinkle that in there. So I've got Bills 27-20 right now, but that's a low-end cover on there. I could see this being 30-14 and the Bills really kind of rolling because of what I said about that Saints defense and the Bills kind of handling their business in this one, bouncing back this week as they gear up for a couple games against the Patriots coming up, by the way, which is going to be huge for that AFC race. So let's hop into, chat is saying Kamara is out, by the way. Rappaport just reported. So I think you're pretty safe for the gambling folk to go Bills minus 6.5. That's probably my favorite bet on the day. Okay. So now we are going to transition into the mailbag. So we're going to start with the Patreon mailbag. We've got a bunch of questions from you amazing Patreon supporters. If you want to be able to submit a question to the show, you even have time to get it in right now. As we go through these, you can head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy and slide into those DMs and lead your question with mailbag question. I'll get to you either here on the show or next week. And also, because we are live, any super chat questions that come in, you guys, I will also be monitoring and answering as we go. But let's open this sucker up. First question here is from Nicholas Craig. If someone put a gun to your head and told you that you were no longer allowed to be a Packers fan, what team would you choose next and why? Well, I'd probably say thank you for relieving me of the suffering. So I always say, I really like smart, well-run teams. So I think I really like the direction of the future of the LA Chargers as an organization. That's a team that I like the moves they make. I think Brandon Staley is very forward-thinking. They would be on my list. I think the Indianapolis Colts, I know Colts fans think I hate them because I think Darius Leonard is overrated, but I do genuinely like the Indianapolis Colts. I think Reich really gets it. I think Ballard really gets it. And I also just think their jerseys are sweet. Yes, the Ravens, going back to like when I was 13, 14, I really liked the Ravens. I used to have a Michael Orr jersey, so the Ravens would be up there. The Bills would be up there. I do genuinely like a lot of teams. I just do. I like the Niners. I like the Cardinals. There's just a lot of teams I like. I only hate dumb teams. So like right now, I don't like the Dolphins because I hate the direction they're going. I don't like the Raiders because Gruden's gone now. But I just hate seeing teams light first round draft picks on fire. The Houston Texans. I hate a team that awards DeAndre Hopkins to another team for a second-round pick and a bag of Doritos. So those are the teams that I just don't like. But for the most part, I do like and root for most teams. And on top of that, because I can see this coming, I try to keep bias removed from some of those other teams that I do get frustrated by. But yeah, good question. Also, we have a super chat from Bojo. Thank you, Bojo. Sutton and Patrick contract opinion. I think steal. So you're asking about Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick, both receivers for the Denver Broncos. I say both steals. I think both guys are undervalued because Tim Patrick undervalued a little bit more because what was he, 7th round pick, undrafted guy. Those guys just never get taken quite as seriously until, if you're an undrafted receiver, you have to prove you're worth 3 times over that of a first or a second round pick like Courtland Sutton. And, the gap between Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton hasn't been that big. But I think Tim Patrick is underrated for that reason. He's been a monster for them for the better part of 20-plus games. And then the Courtland Sutton contract, I think, is also a great deal. $15 million a year for 4 years. If they get a quarterback, I had Courtland Sutton when I did my receiver rankings this summer. I had him in my alpha tier. I really like Courtland Sutton. Ball skills, speed, route running ability. He is super similar to Allen Robinson. And maybe I'm just biased because I had Courtland Sutton my number one receiver in that draft. But I seriously think he has such a bright future if they can figure out their quarterback situation. So I think they're both great deals. I didn't think they were going to be able to keep both of them, but good job by that front office to really get them both on discounts, honestly. So some positivity for the Broncos in their bye week for sure. All right, so let me have a quick sip of lemonade here. We've got a question from Eric. Jonathan Taylor, that is all. Yeah, worth mentioning. Jonathan Taylor is officially in the MVP race, which I don't think I've ever said about a running back, but in a year where no quarterback seems to want to win it, yeah, man. Jonathan Taylor is insanely electric. He is now leading the league in yards from scrimmage, I believe. What gives him a nice benefit as well is it's not just as a runner. He's making big plays in the receiving game as well. He's been an ultimate weapon for the Colts. He has been a huge reason they're winning football games, so that is MVP caliber stuff. I think it's almost exclusively dependent on none of these quarterbacks kind of taking that crown, whether it's Dak or Josh Allen or Lamar or Brady or whoever, or Herbert or whoever it may be. I think there's a clear path for some of these quarterbacks to, lead the way down the stretch. But, Jonathan Taylor's in that mix, 100%. I know that wasn't your question, but I think I answered what you were getting at. All right, from Otter. Does Mac Jones have the traits to be an elite quarterback one day? Top 10, question mark. Drew Brees and Tom Brady were elite quarterbacks without traits, right? If you get to the point where you are a surgeon, you make a significantly less amount of mistakes from the pocket, reading defenses, throwing from the pocket. If you can eliminate mistakes to a high level like Brady and Breeze did, you can push the ball downfield, which I think is a question with Mac Jones, how consistently he'll be able to do that over time. Use your feet a little bit, which I think Mac Jones can. He is athletic enough, I would say. It's not impossible for Mac Jones to be a top 10 quarterback. It's just the margin for error is so slim when you are a pocket player, and it's tough when he's so young. But I love what I've seen from Mac Jones. I'm definitely not ready to entertain top 10 quarterback for him yet, but there's examples of players with his physical skill set being top 10 quarterbacks, so I'm not going to say no. And honestly, he's not that different physically from Joe Burrow. Burrow's a little bit faster, but there's not a significant physical difference between Burrow and Mac Jones when you look at arm talent and kind of quick twitch athleticism. Burrow is definitely more athletic, but it's not night and day, oh my God, it's so much better. Okay, we got a long mailbag question here, but I'll read it. This is from Chris. Okay, bunker down. Even though I like Baker and think he can be a top 10 quarterback in the league, he certainly has not shown it consistently enough worth paying him $40+ million would be stupid. However, I hate all the talk about the Browns needing to move on from him after this year. For one, they have picked up his fifth-year option, and the QB class this year does not seem to shape out to be a great one. Yes. If the Browns should not be in the race to trade for Rodgers or Russ, I think it could be smart to offer Baker a 2-year deal worth $50 to $60 million in guaranteed money to increase the evaluation window on him. Basically doing what the Titans did to Derrick Henry by just giving him slightly more money than the franchise tag. And then he continues to write, this way they could create a win-win scenario. Browns would avoid the restrictions that come with the franchise tag. On the other hand, Baker gains the ability to cash in double. Would you prefer them letting him play out his fifth-year option and then potentially using the franchise tag on him, or offering some deal like mentioned above? I also like the idea, especially because it could reintroduce a tier beneath the elite level starting quarterback. So that's more of a league-wide point. Yes, Baker Mayfield is an extremely fascinating topic right now. That is something that it's weird that nobody mentions that he's got the fifth-year option next year, right? If we go to Baker, everyone talks about they need to make a decision on him now. But if you pull up his contract, as mentioned there, he's under contract next year on his fifth-year option, and he has no leverage to sit it out and say, no, you got to pay me. He has absolutely no leverage based on how he played this year. You can so easily say, Baker, you're playing on that fifth-year option next year. We don't have to pay you just because Josh Allen got paid, just because Lamar Jackson is going to get paid. You ain't those guys. You got to prove it. So it is crazy that nobody brings that up as if he's just an impending free agent, which is just not true. Also, Tanner, thank you so much for the super chat. I will. Well, you don't have a question, but thank you for the super chat support. Much appreciated. I personally, that's what I would do. You don't need to make any financial commitment to him. You can bring him back on the fifth-year option, and then you'll get more clarity next year. And if you tag him off after that season, if you're still unsure, you know what the Browns can do, though, is this is as bad as this top of this quarterback class is, it is a deep quarterback class. What they can do is say a Carson Strong or, again, my draft takes at this point are completely unpolished, but say a guy that they kind of like falls to them in the second round, which I think they have a second round pick. I don't think they used it to move up for JOK. Maybe they did, but you could do like what the Eagles did with Wentz. You got a quarterback you thought was really good. He was faltering a little bit. And, hopefully we don't need to get into Jalen Hurts, but hopefully it's a better prospect than Jalen Hurts was coming out because I think he had a long way to go. But hopefully it's someone in a deeper quarterback class that you can maybe put a little pressure on Baker. So that could probably help. But I do like the idea of your 2-year, $60 million contract, whatever it is. That's only to me if Baker's being difficult. Maybe you do that as like, okay, fine, Baker, we'll give in. We'll pay you a little bit, but we're not going to pay you a ton. And you can sit out next year if you want. But I would just bring him back on the 5th-year option and get another year to evaluate him. From John LaDuca, why don't more teams draft a QB in the top 10 when they already have a good, solid quarterback? Young quarterbacks are not perfect. You write a lot here, but I think I get what you're saying is like if you have a Kirk or you have a Daniel Jones or whatever it may be, if you have a solid quarterback that you're comfortable with, draft one in the top 10. I think a lot of, some teams do. The Niners did that. They traded up. They got Lance. They're going to sit him behind Jimmy for a year or two. The Vikings were reportedly interested in coming up for Justin Fields. I think the smart teams do often think like that. But a lot of times you've got coaches on the hot seat. You've got big financial commitments to these quarterbacks. You got GMs on the hot seat. A lot of people just make win-now decisions and don't necessarily think about that kind of stuff. So it's very franchise to franchise, but that is a very smart way to go about it, I do believe, is, draft a guy that's not going to feel pressure to start right away. We're seeing this year especially, like, these young quarterbacks, it's not always Herbert and Burrow. Like, a lot of these guys need more time. All right, next question from David. How much of Stafford's slump could you say is due to the turbulence the offense was experiencing the last few days with Woods being out and OBJ basically just getting reintegrated into a new offense? Though I know Stafford isn't Tom Brady, my question essentially is, do you think Stafford and the Rams' offense trajectory could be like that of the 2020 Bucks, who took some time to kind of get heated up? I think Stafford, as great as he's been this year, and as I've been a Stafford guy, I've pounded the table for him and said he's been underrated in Detroit. I've consistently had him as a top 10 guy. Like, you guys know I'm not some Stafford hater, but he has been a very streaky player throughout his career. And I think part of this reality is you change teams, you put them with McVay and better receivers and better defensive support, you're going to see a better version of him, and we absolutely have. This has been the best season of Stafford's career so far. But I still think he's a guy that post-snap, he can get confused by some stuff. He can get a little impatient and force some balls. It goes, the Titans game, that was before Odell, and that was before the Robert Woods injury. He was broken in that game too. So I think that there are, turns out, believe it or not, the answer to did Detroit ruin Matthew Stafford? Yes, they did, but it's not all Detroit's fault, right? I think there are some issues with Stafford's game as well. And I also think Tom Brady, my answer to your question is no. I think, number one, we've already seen the Rams really peak and hit it hard. Whereas Oh, that's going to be a soundbite right there. But, Tom Brady is very much chemistry based, whereas I think Stafford is a little bit more improvisational, doesn't necessarily need the chemistry helps, of course, but I don't see a ton of parallels between the Bucks, who needed some time to click in, and the Rams, if that makes sense. I think Stafford's just a little bit streaky, and I think he's going to heat up at some point this season. I don't know if that's this Sunday against Green Bay or 3 weeks from now, or if when they get to the playoffs, if he's going to be hot or cold, but I think that is part of Stafford's game. So from Finn, I'm not sure if you've seen the TJ Slayton play for the Packers, but am I wrong in thinking he's one of the biggest steals from the draft? He's been so good when he plays. He has been a steal for the Packers. I wouldn't say he's been one of the biggest steals of the draft because it is a small sample size, but I thought that was a great value when they picked him. He's actually incredibly athletic. He's quick. He has good get-off for a 340-pound guy with a lot of power. So I do think they found a player there in TJ Slayton, and he's been a steal. I don't know if I would say he's been one of the biggest steals of the draft, but he's, I guess, up there. From Matthew, with the 49ers probably going with Lance next year, what do you think about Jimmy G going to the Steelers? Ben has to hang it up this year, and Haskins can't even beat out Rudolph for the backup job. I think putting Jimmy G in an established culture like the Steelers, dude, I think Jimmy G would be a stellar fit for the Steelers. Jimmy G gets a lot of crap. You guys have heard me defend Jimmy G. He does some things very well. And think back to our Ryan Tannehill conversation. You find a limited quarterback. Jimmy G's a limited quarterback. Find out, ask yourself, what does he do well? And then put him in a scheme that captures his strengths and limits his weaknesses. And that's a very different offense. So Jimmy G in San Francisco right now is in an offense that is designed for long developing, deep passing concepts. Jimmy G has a very sharp, quick processor. You see him drop and he goes boom, 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 very Tom Brady-esque. But he's got a limited arm. He's not accurate, which accuracy is one of the most important traits in those Shanahan offenses. It's important in every system, but especially the ability to throw the ball deep. Whereas Pittsburgh, he's just a better version of Big Ben right now. Thinks quicker than Big Ben does right now. He's got a quicker release. I think he's actually more accurate than Big Ben. He's got a little bit more juice in his arm to push the ball downfield. I think in that system, Jimmy G would be a good answer for the Steelers. I think that would make a ton of sense. So that's a great suggestion, Matthew. I really like that move, and I want to see it now. We have a super chat from Snapshot. Thank you, Snapshot. Appreciate the support. Means a lot. What rookies right now that are being quiet when it comes to the media attention but can make an explosive entrance in their second year, similar to like Trayvon Diggs? Ooh, that's a heavy-hitting question. I want to come up with at least somebody for you. My mind went straight to corners when you said Trayvon Diggs, but I think all of those high-level corners are great candidates for your question. You got, the guys that are playing. I can't think of his name right now. Surtain, he's had a good year, but not a great year. Eric Stokes, good year, not a great year. Asante Samuel. I'm forgetting someone. Browns guy. Greg Newsome, been very good. Those guys are all great candidates. And, of course, J.C. Horn coming back from injury. So, honestly, a lot of those corners are great candidates who have been, solid for rookie corners but need more time to be a little more consistent. Tanner just had a couple good suggestions in the chat that caught the corner of my eye. Zaven Collins and Jason Owe. Yes. Odafe Owe, Jason. Changed his name, or that is his name. I think the quarterbacks, man, like Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Fields, dude, the quarterbacks could be so much better next year because they've been pretty bad this year. So those are some good options right there, I would say. Good question. Okay, mailbag question from Alex. If you had to pick from 2 expansion teams with the sorry, a little typo. With these factors, what team would you pick? Team 1, your salary cap is double for the next 3 years. For example, you get $400 million for the next 3 years. But then you're back to the normal cap like every other team. Or your draft pick amount is doubled for 3 years. So you have 2 firsts. I would double my draft capital because you're not going to be able to spend $400 million in cap space that quickly because you're not going to be able to attract a ton of people. You're probably going to be more like the Texans, where you have to kind of bring in guys that aren't so much wanted. So I would definitely want the extra draft capital because those guys don't have a choice to come there. And you've got youth in a building block. That one's pretty easy for me. From Brian, would you ever consider reacting to takes on some of the ESPN talk shows? So this is something I've really been wanting to do, is create a TikTok. It's just I got the wedding coming up in December, busy all the time, but I only have so much time, but that's a great concept for just stupid little TikTok videos, is reacting to bad takes on ESPN. So if and when I create my TikTok, I think that will be the place to do that. But definitely, man, there's some just garbage takes on ESPN. Absolute mind-melting garbage. What a just shitty network, seriously. From Tomsky, if Jalen Hurts is a starting level quarterback, don't you think it could make sense for the Eagles to go all in now? No. Because Jalen Hurts is, it's me saying he's a starting caliber quarterback. That means I think he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league. Look, I would go all in if I have an elite quarterback. Otherwise, I don't think giving up a bunch of your future to bank on a Jalen Hurts to go on this great playoff run is smart process. I do get your point, though. You got Fletcher Cox, Taylor, like Darius Slay. They have some really good players on the back end of their careers. I understand what you're saying. I think you can do little stuff to give yourself the best chance within reason to win a Super Bowl, but I'm not like dishing out these first-round picks for some veterans and banking on you to go on a Super Bowl run with Jalen Hurts over the next 2 years. Like, no, I still have a 5 to 10 year window in mind, and eventually, ideal world is Jalen Hurts keeps his rapid development up, and 2 years from now, you feel good about him saying he's a Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, whatever it is, like a top end quarterback worth going all in on. That's ideal, but over the next couple of years, you're probably going to reach the conclusion that you can do a lot better than Jalen Hurts, and then you want to make a move to upgrade there. I think that's an overreaction to how the Eagles are playing lately. Hurts has done some fun stuff, but no, I'm not going all in on them winning a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. No, I'm still playing the slow game there if I'm Philly. From Wyatt, assuming all other things like coaching are equal, which do you think would be more likely to win a Super Bowl? An average quarterback with an elite roster, something like Jimmy G on the Bucks, or an elite quarterback with an average roster, something like Rodgers on the Eagles? Thanks for the consistently great content. Well, thanks for the great question, Wyatt. Eagles are interesting because I think Rodgers would fit really well with that personnel. Let's say maybe who has just kind of average across the board, like Colts? No, Colts have an elite offensive line. Who's like an average roster? How about trying to think of who's got the most average roster in the NFL. Bengals, maybe? Patriots. Titans is a pretty average roster. Let's go Titans. I think strictly roster talent alone, I think Titans have a very average roster. Vikings, Raiders. Spencer Sports has got it. Raiders are the most average roster in the NFL. No, Raiders are below average. Now that I think about it. Their offensive line's trash. Seahawks is pretty average. I think Vikings might be the answer. Average across the board on defense. And then you have like a good receiving core but a bad O-line, so I think that balances out. I think Vikings is the most average roster in the NFL right now. So we'll use the Vikings as your. So would you rather have say Aaron Rodgers or an elite quarterback, Patrick Mahomes? We'll say Patrick Mahomes on the Vikings or Jimmy G on the Bucks. And just doing that experiment, I think I'd go Bucks. Because I think the offense would be highly functional and the defense would still be great. I think you're still going to have like, with an elite quarterback, you're still going to have like some hiccup weeks. You're still going to have you're going to be more matchup dependent. You're going to be a little more high variance. They're both going to be like, top 3, top 4 teams. It's a fun thought experiment. It is close. You're always going to have the higher upside with a guy like Mahomes, but you're going to be so much more consistently riding a high line with that Bucs team. Okay, from Michael, a lot of long mailbag questions this week. I'm not complaining. Start of the fourth quarter. So Michael has been sending in messages like during Raiders games, probably while drinking, and it's been very fun to monitor his emotional roller coaster on this Raiders season. But he says, it's the start of the fourth quarter. I can't believe Carr has only mustered 6 points or whatever. I hate to admit that you were spot on about Carr. Yes! He needed Gruden to give him a backbone. Hopefully I'm wrong and it's the short-term drama of the Ruggs and Gruden traumas, but it's not looking good. Yeah, man. I'm with you. I'm with you. Another hot take. The more that you... Okay, I'm not going to read that. Funny message. Thanks for the message, Michael. Can't read all of that live on the podcast here, but appreciate the comedy. Okay, from Honk Boy, does Joe Brady survive the year in Carolina? Yes. The OC, as I said, with Jason Garrett. Now, Joe Brady's a much better OC than Jason Garrett, but you see it everywhere. The second there's any offensive struggles, it's the coordinator sucks. Fire him. Get him out of here. It's all his fault. Then they fire him and nothing changes. It happens to multiple teams year after year after year. And the Panthers have a crap offensive line. They have one receiver worth a damn. And their quarterback situation's been a mess. So no, don't fire Joe Brady. It ain't his fault. Get him a damn offensive line and a better quarterback before you start calling for his head. From Justin... So it looks like your Cam can't throw the ball past 15 yards take is as good as gone. I'm not ready to say that. No. He made a couple good throws, but no, I'm not going to accept that Cam Newton has great arm talent after what I saw against Washington. From Tanner, Hey Marcus, been watching your content for a while now. Finally able to support you. Thank you, Tanner. Means a lot. Appreciate the support. My question is, while yes, the position of running back has decreased, I think it is still there to help maintain the tempo of an offense. So what team do you think should be looking to upgrade at the position, whether it be free agency or the draft? For me, it would be the Bills. I like Moss and Singletary, but just have not seen enough from them. Yeah, I think the issue with running back is there's a couple things that get affiliated with this whole idea that running backs don't matter. Number one is this idea that the running game does not matter. That is not true. The other thing that gets misconstrued is that there's no value in having a good running back. The question is the trade-off of paying or drafting a running back a lot of money or high versus what you can do with that cap space or draft capital. That's why you see like drafting a Jonathan Taylor in the second round, hitting on an Aaron Jones in the sixth round, Derrick Henry in the second round, and Derrick Henry's kind of an outlier to this whole conversation. Alvin Kamara in the third round. Like, having a good running back can still really help you. It's just a matter of what's the trade-off. The trade-off of having a great running back to a bad running back is not, that gap is not as big as having a great receiver or a great corner compared to a bad receiver or a bad corner, if that makes sense. You can get by with an average running back. You can't really get by with a bad or average receiver or corner. So the running game is still very important. And with all of the dime packages and quarters coverages that we're seeing, the running game is making a little bit more of a comeback, by the way. But there are teams that it makes sense to spend a second-round pick on a good running back or get a reasonable free agent contract on one of these guys. And I think who you suggested is a great example, the Buffalo Bills. And, that would take a lot of pressure off of Josh Allen if they could get more explosive plays through the run. I think the Kansas City Chiefs, believe it or not, really need a better running game because they have such good run blocking, and teams are going to run these quarters coverages on them all day because that's shown to be a formula for beating Mahomes. So I think the Chiefs, even though they just spent a first on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't know if that was a great pick. And then, there's teams like the Texans and the Dolphins and teams that just don't have good running backs. But yes, I think there are certainly situations where there are teams that need to invest a little bit in that position. Now, you don't need to draft them in the first round. You don't need to spend $50 million on them. But there is still room to invest in the running back when it's reasonable. From Jake, if you were looking to make the Raiders Super Bowl contenders, how would you approach this offseason? Wow. Would you look to find an elite wide receiver to replace Ruggs, try to make the offense elite, or focus more on defense? Wow. I don't think the Raiders are becoming Super Bowl contenders overnight. I would, if I want to get very real, if I want to look myself in the mirror and say, how the hell am I going to win a Super Bowl with this Raiders team in the next 3 to 5 years? Because it ain't happening next year. I'm sorry. Derek Carr's gone. I'm calling Washington, Denver. I don't even care about the interdivision thing. Sending him to Denver. I'm calling everybody. Will you give me a first-round pick for Derek Carr? If the answer is yes, he's yours. Thank you. I like Derek Carr. He's a very good quarterback. But you're not winning a Super Bowl with Derek Carr. Not with that roster in that condition. I need to hit rock freaking bottom. And you're not hitting rock freaking bottom when Derek Carr's your quarterback. You're going to be picking in the 10 to 15 range. So he's gone. And then I'm spending the next 2 years clearing up cap space, trading the veterans that I can move. I'm building around, Waller, who's up there in age. You might consider moving Waller. I probably am not. I'm building around my left tackle, who I always struggle with his name, but he's damn good. The UCLA kid, Colton Miller. I'm building around him. I'm building around You hope Max Crosby keeps playing like this. My young safeties, Merrick and Hobbs and Mullen. You've got actually some optimism in that secondary. You can keep Casey Hayward around to kind of develop another guy, but secondary is not that bad. Abrams is gone, but I'm tearing the damn thing up from the bottom. If I want to have a serious look in the mirror and say I want to win a Super Bowl here within the next 3 or 5 years, and I'm probably you're probably going to have to hire like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not coming to me, but you're going to have to basically throw your head coach to the wolves like the Texans are doing right now. I really think, the Raiders could be an average team. They could be a playoff team next year, but they are not winning a Super Bowl the way they're currently constructed. The odds of that happening they're just so slim. From Bryden Lawson, have you taken a look at Christian Darrisaw this year? How is he looking? He looks just like I expected. He's been a great run blocker. He's been an average to below average pass protector. He's been a little bit matchup dependent as a pass protector. He struggled in certain matchups. He's looked better in others. He was not a great pass protecting prospect. He actually reminded me a ton of Andrew Thomas coming out, where he's this great run blocker, great athlete, but not a guy that was put in a lot of traditional dropbacks at Virginia Tech. So he's going to take some time to become a better pass protector, but I think he's been as advertised. The left tackle situation hasn't been a disaster for them. That's, I guess, my final answer there. We still have like 10 mailbag questions, by the way, guys. Is it panic time for the Bills, or is it if they lose to the Saints this Thanksgiving? Do I still think they're the best team in the AFC East? They're in trouble. If they lose to the Saints, I think I would say no. They're not the best team in the AFC East anymore because the Patriots are looking real good. And I think the Patriots match up really well, specifically against the Bills as well. Very similar to the same reasons I said the Colts match up well. They're in trouble. I don't think it's panic time because the AFC is such a mess. They're right in the mix there. But yeah, they got to rediscover themselves offensively, and the defense, I don't really trust the defense. They're a little squishy. From Cody, going to my second ever NFL game in January to watch the Packers take on the Vikings, so it's got me thinking, what was your favorite NFL game you ever attended in person and why? Mine is Packers-Bears Week 17, I think 2012. Game was for the division. It was like 2 degrees out, and Rodgers hit Randall Cobb for a walk-off touchdown to go to the playoffs. There was Bears fans crying. It was nuts. That was the best NFL game I've ever been to. I will say I was at that Bengals-Packers game this year with the 5 missed field goals. That was nutty. So I think those would be my 2 answers. There's another game I had a blast at, was Panthers at Browns. And that was when Baker was like in his rookie year heating up, like kind of when he was really looking like rookie of the year. And the Browns fans in that moment were so fun. I think they won that game. That was also one of the most fun games I've been to because there was just this aura of hope and optimism in Cleveland that I don't think is very normal there. So that was also really, really cool. From Joe Woods, would you say Kenny Golladay might be the next Alshon Jeffrey? Injuries, big contracts, and underperformances. That's not a bad comparison. I think Galladay's a little faster, a little more well-built for the modern game, but definitely not a bad comparison. I like Golladay a little bit more, but that's relatively accurate, I would say. I mean, you got to remember, Alshon Jeffrey had about a 4 or 5 year stretch of being well received as like a top 15-ish receiver. So it's not a huge insult to Kenny Golladay to say that. From Chase asks, could you take us through your Pro Bowl ballot? I'm actually going to be making an individual video about that, Chase. I'm going to release it on Friday. I'm just going to do all the votes live, so that'll be fun. upload it as a video. But the NFL.com right now is like down, believe it or not, right? Freaking ridiculous how bad their website is. Different tangent, different day. This, I don't know if is a question or not. Yeah, it is. Can't create explosive plays right. This is in quotations. Can't create explosive plays right now. They can run the ball. They have a good screen game, and they have a great offensive line. They don't have receivers that can get open downfield, and the QB is struggling to push the ball downfield. They've got issues. This was my take on the Browns in my power rankings this week, and I couldn't help but think of the Patriots last year. Was the Browns' playoff window really only 1 year? LOL. No. The Browns, when someone asked me earlier who would you be a fan of, the Browns would also very much be in that equation because I think Stefanski and Barry, the GM, they operate a great organization there right now. I think they know what they're doing. They've really had to turn this thing around. It's been a disappointing year. They got to figure out the quarterback receiver deal that's just not good right now. They've got bottom 10 quarterback play. They've got bottom 5 receiver play right now. The Odell Beckham thing, I think they were really leaning on him being an integral part of that offense. That just didn't work. So that's huge. You know, the quarterback receiver output has to be up here if you want to be a good playoff team, and it just hasn't been. So they got to figure that out, but they have a really good surrounding situation to do that. That defense, super young secondary, they're only going to get better. Myles Garrett ain't going anywhere. They can get better on that defensive line. JOK is only in his first year. Like, the Browns are, I think, only getting started. It's been a disappointing year, but no, I don't think the Browns' playoff window was only this year. They could definitely be like a post-hype playoff team next year, or good playoff team. We just got a super chat from Andrew. No question, but just taking a minute to say what's up and hope all is good. It is going great, Andrew. Actually, a little bit of an announcement here. We just got an offer on a house accepted, me and Anna, so that's big news today before Thanksgiving. Obviously a lot more to go on that, but could be moving to a house, which is pretty damn sweet, so life is good. Thank you for the super chat and the support, Andrew. Means a lot. From Jagonathan Srinath. What's up, Jagonathan? It's been a minute. How you doing? But how would you rate the Bucs receiving core now? Evans is a high end too. He says perfect eval. You're welcome. Godwin looks okay. Brait, OJ look bad. AB and Gronk look irreplaceable. I would say Godwin looks more than okay. Godwin's been pretty sweet the last couple weeks. Mike Evans, yes, very high end number 2. And then, yeah, you got Brait. Like, the tight ends have been a little overrated. And yeah, with Antonio Brown, he's got to get back out there. I think that Antonio Brown is what takes them to that next level, because Brown has the elite separation ability, the chemistry with Brady, and him being out definitely has reduced it to not the best in the NFL. But just Godwin and Evans alone with, Gronk and Howard and Brait, they're going to get Scotty Miller back who can play. Like, it's still a top 10 unit for sure. But definitely not number 1 right now without AB. From Adam, was wondering, with all these injuries coming from Thursday Night Football, do you believe the NFL will ever get rid of it? Nope, I don't think they will. I like Thursday Night Football. Obviously, it's hard on the coaches and the players, but money talks. And the NFL's adding more. They're talking about expansion teams. They just added a 17th game, another playoff game. Thursday Night Football is going nowhere, and I'm honestly fine with that. I enjoy watching NFL football on Thursday and not having to wait all week. From Chase, how many teams do you think are still in contention for the NFC 7 seed? Let me pull up my power rankings because that makes it easier. Can actually even drop that in here on the live feed. 1 second. Boom. How about that? Technology's fun. Let's shrink this a little bit. So I would say let's just lump it into 6 and 7 seed because it gets complicated. So you got Vikings. You've got Niners. They're heavy favorites right now, but the Eagles have an easy schedule. The Saints are still in the mix, and the Panthers are still in the mix. Washington, I think their schedule also lightens up, so they could potentially sneak in like they did last year. How wild would that be? They win the division at like 6-10 last year, and then they sneak in as like a 7-9. But that would be, I think, the 6. Atlanta, they're just so bad right now. I don't see it. So I think there's 6 teams. But the Vikings and Niners look like heavy favorites right now because they're actually good teams, unlike, everyone else. The Eagles are making things interesting, though, I will say that. Let's get rid of that. Tanner with the super chat. Thank you, Tanner. Better QB for rebuilding, Heineke or Minshew? I'm going to go Minshew. I don't know. They're both so fun. Heineke is like a higher variance guy, whereas Minshew's you know a little bit more what you're getting every week. I miss watching Gardner Minshew play. There's just something about him, man. I guess it kind of depends like what system I want to run too, like who my head coach is. Like if I want to do that more like spread coast offense where I'm getting rid of the ball quick and deviating, I'd go Minshew. If I want more explosiveness, more verticality, my quarterback running around making stuff, if I have a bad offensive line, I think Heineke would be more beneficial. So it depends. From Jack, what do you think about the Dan Campbell taking over play calling in Detroit? Is it a long-term thing? I honestly didn't even know that happened. That's really interesting. I don't really have any strong opinions on that. I don't remember Dan Campbell calling plays. So I will just keep that in note and maybe ask me again of what I think about it because I don't think we have a lot of sample size of Dan Campbell calling plays. I always pictured him as like the CEO culture guy. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. But I don't really have any opinions on it right now. I like Dan Campbell. I hope he's a good play caller, but I just don't know. From Jack, if you could coach any of the 2021 first-round QBs, which would you want to coach and why? Also, what scheme would you run with them? Lawrence, everyone else is super exciting, and I like all these quarterbacks, but, Lawrence was QB1. I don't think anything's changed at this point to say I would want anyone else other than him. I think he's coachable. I would love to work with any of those 5 guys, though. I think they all have really bright futures if supported correctly. And with Lawrence, you can run a lot of stuff with Lawrence. You don't need to necessarily be pigeonholed to one scheme, but I definitely want to use more play action, more Shanahan style, deep crossing stuff. I'd integrate that stuff. Really what I'd want to do is pair Brian Dable, who does a little bit of everything, with Trevor Lawrence. That's what I want to see. I was so mad the Jags didn't hire Brian Dable. We also just got a question, a super chat from Stash. Thank you, Stash. Appreciate it. What did you think of starting a small company for TFG? That is like on my my 10-year dream plan, right? I'm 27. By the time I'm 36, I would love to have like my own establishment, an office with a couple employees. We're all making content. Everybody likes the stuff. We're able to make weekly videos and all this stuff. Like totally on my radar. It's hard. I'm not at that point financially. Super chats help though. Wink, wink. But yeah, that's definitely like something I would love to envision, like an official company and like a network. So, I appreciate you expressing interest in that kind of stuff, because that is the stuff I think about for the business side of things. Tanner with one last super chat. Gonna head out. Thank you for the show. Thank you for the super chats. Tanner, appreciate you, man. From Connor, we're getting towards the back end of the questions here, as long as I'll keep going as long as the super chats are flowing. But Connor asks, Micah Parsons had 12 pressures against the Chiefs, leads all first rounders in pass rush win rate at 27%, which is absurd. These are elite numbers, and he's shown he can put up elite numbers when he's lined up at edge for most of the game. Should the Cowboys consider moving him to edge full-time, do you think he could be an elite number one pass rusher? It is so fascinating, man. I knew he was going to be able to rush the passer. I made comparisons to Dont'a Hightower, but his athleticism is just so much better that his ceiling was always going to be higher than that. I certainly did not see this coming. Like you said, just lining up at edge all game and just going to town. Correct me if I'm wrong, that I think was against Andrew Wiley, which, you don't want to dismiss it, but I think you take it with a grain of salt. But that's not really the point I'm trying to make. I think he has shown elite upside as a pass rusher. And ideally, you keep him as a 3-4, and you can still sprinkle in, 4 or 5 dropbacks a game and get hybrid with him, because why not? But I think you make a great point. I think long term, and the Cowboys are running so much more 3-4 nowadays that it works. I really like that. Just 3-4 outside linebacker. And, another thing I like, if they could pull this off, just a thought I had. What if they could sign Von Miller? And DeMarcus Lawrence is it's funny, we just got a comment. He looks like a young Von Miller, because their size and athletic profile is, I guess, comparable. But, Von Miller probably not going to be there for the Rams next year, depending on how that all plays out. Miller's from Texas, I think. Like, what if they got Von Miller as a mentor? Because Miller, to me, can really coach him the finesse aspect, which he's just lacking. He's never been a pass rusher. He's never studied that part of the game. Like, yeah, he has insane potential. His athletic ability is as high as it goes. It's absurd. I mean, the guy ran like a 4.36. He is insane. He's Defensive Player of the Year. It's not even close. And how good was that exchange? Cowboys and Eagles both winning that scenario. The Cowboys would have taken Surtain, and he was gone. They moved down. They get Parsons anyway. The Eagles trade up, get Devonta Smith. Both those teams, ultra win-win trade right there, interdivision. Pretty rare. From Patrick Hill, which teams do you expect to have head coach vacancies at the end of the season? And who are the candidates you would pick to fill them? So unfortunately, Patrick, I appreciate the question. I am going to punt to your mailbag question. I do appreciate it. But this is going to be like a whole show in January. I'm going to talk about the vacancies, the candidates, and all that stuff. Right now, the obvious ones are Bears, Seahawks, we talked about earlier. There's some guys on the fence. I think Rivera's probably saved his job, actually, over the last couple weeks. But Joe Judge is going to be interesting. I think Urban Meyer's still going to be there next year, sadly. But that's going to be a whole show. I appreciate the question, but I am going to punt that one, because that's a big topic that I want to hit in a different show. From Tyler, if you were becoming an NFL GM, I wish, what do you think some of your strengths and weaknesses would be? Example, player/personnel decisions, optimizing the cap, balancing current and future success, handling media. I think I'd be pretty good with media. I think my YouTube experience would come in handy there. Getting some of those questions and trying to keep my cool. I would hope that I'd be good at finding a quarterback, but that's just so tough. The dream would be to have a quarterback, and then I think everything else I would be pretty damn good at. I think when it comes to like finding value free agents would be a strength of mine. I think I've got a pretty good track record of being like, I'd sign him, and then those guys go and play pretty well. One thing I think I'd be very good at is, and this is hard because I'm not in those shoes, but I would love to take a page out of Bill Belichick's playbook and not overpay guys that are like fan favorites, or like, I think I would have a very objective view on like my players. Like, I would be comfortable letting certain guys go and rolling the dice. I would hope I have the job security to do stuff like that, but I think I would be pretty good at that. I think my weaknesses would probably be when it comes to evaluating players in the secondary. Although I've had a pretty good record of hitting on players in the secondary the last couple years, that I still feel like my knowledge base of techniques and certain different like rule assignments in the coverages, like I think that's my biggest knowledge gap right now, because just when I did play, I had nothing to do with the secondary. I was an offensive lineman, so everything else is pretty related, but not the secondary. So that's been kind of a knowledge gap that I'm still trying to learn. But I think when it comes to like league trends and maximizing value through the draft and free agency, that would be like my strength as a GM. I'm going to send that tape out to teams now. Okay, that is, I think, everything we have. Did we get any questions during the show here? Yes, we did. We got 3 more questions via Patreon during the show. So this is from Nathan. Do you think the decision to flex Broncos, this has been a big talking point, is people are mad that the NFL flexed the Broncos-Chiefs game into Sunday Night Football and not the Chargers-Bengals game next week. Objectively, Bengals-Chargers is a better football game, would make for better Sunday Night Football. Unfortunately, the NFL doesn't just look at like matchups and what the diehards want to see. They're looking at the whole big picture, which makes sense. And objectively, Chiefs-Broncos is such a bigger market than Bengals-Chargers. You know, I'm going to, especially Bengals fans, I think are going to get pissed off when I say this, but the reality is Bengals and Chargers are 2 of the smallest markets in the league. And as great as that game's going to be, it sucks though, because part of that is this happens to them. So if you put Chargers-Bengals on Sunday Night Football, that's how you grow great fan bases. So it sucks. I totally understand the frustration from like Chargers and Bengals, but it is a business decision from the NFL, so I guess I get it. Okay, Loomer writes in and asks, who do you think is better in a vacuum right now, Burrow or Herbert? And what are both of their strengths that they have over the other? I do think these guys are extremely tight. I think over the last 6-7 weeks, I'm putting Herbert over Burrow at this point, but I still love both these guys. You're in a win-win situation if either are your quarterback. So, let's start with Herbert. So Herbert's strengths are, I would say, pre-snap confidence. I think he's developed really well at understanding coverages, where he needs to go with the football. I think Burrow also has that at an even higher level, and I think, okay, let's restart. Let's reframe this in kind of a different way and just go through the different traits. So pre-snap processing, I give to Burrow over Herbert. I think they're relative strengths for both of them. Post-snap processor is a huge nod towards Burrow. When the play breaks down and there's pressure, I love Burrow's confidence and poise under pressure. Herbert's is still pretty good, but I think he's shown more mistakes in those situations. And I don't want to say he panics, but just isn't as comfortable like finding the weaknesses in coverages like Burrow is. So that's where I think Burrow has a nod, is like post-snap, processing, navigating difficult situations. Then you get into arm talent and accuracy. That's where like Herbert just, that alone, just it's so different. Herbert can just make throws that aren't available to Joe Burrow. So that's where you get a huge nod towards Herbert. And his downfield accuracy is already some of the best in the league. Then, like, decision-making under pressure. You know, Burrow's actually made some pretty bad mistakes over the last few weeks. I still trust him a little bit more than Herbert, but that gap's pretty damn close. Like, decision-making and propensity to create turnover-worthy plays, it's pretty close. Mobility, like Burrow's functional mobility is even higher than Herbert, but Herbert's just like faster and stronger. So I like the way Burrow moves and navigates pressure a little bit more, but Herbert's still really good at that. So I hope that was a good dissection of those two players. I still think the future for both those guys is incredible. Okay, now this is officially our last question, unless any super chats come in here. Though Lamar is still on his rookie contract, the roster around him isn't all that good this year, yet he still carried this Ravens offense through thick and thin. Eric Eager from the PFF Forecast, shout out to Eric, was talking about how due to all the injuries, the Ravens inadvertently got to see what Lamar's performance would be like if he were on a mega contract and had to play with lesser talent. With how much Lamar has meant to the Ravens, I want to know how much you'd be willing to pay for him and if he deserves Mahomes' money. Yeah, I'd be comfortable paying him. I flirted with the idea that, about a year ago, he hadn't shown to be that level player yet. I've been really impressed with him. I think he's still not like a top 5 passer, but he's very good as a passer. He's developed his deep ball accuracy. I think his poise under pressure and decision-making has been much better, which is where I wanted to see him improve, and he has. So I think, yes, you give Lamar that super deal. I think he's earned it just as much as Josh Allen earned it last year, so I think that's a pretty easy decision for the Ravens. And I'll just leave it at that. Like, there's still some issues there. I think he has some weaknesses. I say I'll just leave it at there, and then I go on a tangent. That's pretty typical me. But, he's not a perfect passer. I still think you're in the process of identifying, like, what passing scheme do you truly want to put in front of Lamar? Do you go full Shanahan? Do you meld this hybrid look of the Greg Roman stuff with, power read stuff? I don't necessarily know. That's not my job to figure out. I think the answer is yes, Lamar is a megastar. I think you have to make some different decisions. I think what I'm getting at is, at this point, Greg Roman probably just has to go. I think he does some really good stuff to maximize Lamar's strengths, but he's not adding enough new stuff to maximize his development as a passer, if that makes sense. So I still think you should lean into a lot of the stuff that Greg Roman does, but they need to get more expansive with that. And that's where they've really been held back, I think, offensively. Because, again, Lamar is not a perfect passer, but he's certainly good enough that they can do and get away with a lot more than what they're running right now. So it's fascinating, but yes, pay Lamar Jackson. Because you're not doing better than that. So that's it. I appreciate everybody for watching live. We're still here about an hour and a half in. We got 160 concurrent viewers. So thank you everybody for your super chats. Really appreciate the support. If you missed any part of this show, it's going to be it gets posted on YouTube so you can watch it back. And also the audio version should be up on Spotify, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be up here within the next 20 minutes or so. Really hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with the family. Enjoy football. Enjoy some great food. And we'll see you. No studs and duds this week, but we will see you Friday for my Pro Bowl picks, Pro Bowl selections. The full weekly picks video will be on Patreon later tonight. And that's it. Appreciate you guys for watching. We'll see you later.